We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Thursday. Lots of shit happening this week. We've had plenty to talk about. We'll have more to talk about today. Now, because I'm doing a video version of this, I'm looking at my face right now, which isn't necessarily the most pleasant thing for me. I look at my face and I think, when I was younger, and then I realized when I was younger, I was no better. So it doesn't fucking make a difference. But I noticed I got a little color today, as my wife would say. It's almost red. It doesn't hurt. I'm not sunburned, but I was out on the boat. If you saw my TikToks, you know that I did a few from the boat. My wife took some friends out. We went around the lake and it was a good time, relaxing. But I got some sun, didn't use sunblock. I'll be all right. Might sting a little in the shower, but I'll be fine. I kind of feel like Donald Trump, though, but I don't have that orange tinge. It's more of a red tinge. A little. I even got some white around my eyes, like I had something covering my eyes, but I didn't. I don't know what the fuck up is that. Maybe the hat. I don't know. Anyway, we'll deal with the sunburn. Um, Happens every year. I'm fine. It got me thinking about when I was on the boat, though, on the pontoon. I did a TikTok and I said, "Here I am, old white guy on a pontoon. I'm going to have to pull up and get some gas. And if while I'm sitting there, a large African American security guard comes up to me and says, 'You got to move that.' I'm going to move that motherfucker because I don't want that heat." God damn that Alabama brawl. That is truly amazing. It's amazing how certain things can take over the internet. I did one video about the Alabama brawl, and last check, it has 460,000 views. It wasn't even that good a video, for God's sake, but it was because it had to do with that brawl. You know what I was so impressed by more than anything, more than the African American folks kicking the shit out of the white rednecks? There was something I was more impressed with. That is that, of course, a lot of people of color were cheering about this thing, but so were many white people. I think white people in this country of reasonable mind are getting tired of all the shit. Uh, the racism in this country, it's absolutely abhorrent. As much as we aren't of color, we still understand the frustration. We're still irritated by what is going on and what is uh, perpetuated by the Republican Party. So this seemed like a small win for the good guys. And when I say good guys, I'm not talking of people of color. I'm talking of people of a reasonable mind, whether you're black, white, red, whatever your color is, doesn't matter. We've been dealing too much with these other crazy fucks that continually preach hate because of people's differences. Really is no difference in us. I mean, the fact that one person is maybe brown and I'm white, well, red now, but you know what I'm saying. The difference is, to me, the difference is no more different than the difference in the color of your hair or the color of your eyes. It's an aesthetic. It's something that we can see, but it doesn't tell us anything about the heart, the soul, the character of somebody. And that's why I've always said, um, I'm not going to find bad in people by virtue of their color. But at the same time, when I come across a person that's a dick, I don't care what color they are. If they're a dick, I don't like them, and I'm going to say something to them about it. Anyway, the Alabama thing, fucking love that. I love that. And now, now we hear the story. I had somebody come to one of my posts and made a comment. How do you know they were Trump Levucks? How do you know they were racist? Well, they were white and in Alabama, and they look like rednecks. So the chances were good that they were racist. But uh, the fact is, they proved it to us, because when they went to the hospital after getting their ass kicked, they started refusing help from uh, Black nurses and doctors, and even spewing the N-word. So for those of you wondering why I think they're racist, dumb fuck, redneck pieces of shit, because they are. They are. They were. Anyway, we've got some emails and we'll get to it. We've got all kinds of things happening. We hear Fonnie Willis is probably not coming out with her indictments until next week, which, we hate the delay, but as long as they come, that's all that matters. And we've got more to that story. There's a lot of crazy shit going on with Donald Trump and Fonnie Willis. Let's get to the emails. This first email comes to me from this is a long motherfucker. This is Deb. Always love hearing from Deb. She says, let me get this lined up right. It's different when you're on video too, because you can see the confusion on my face when something goes awry, like the email, the file zips up and down. Anyway, she goes on to say, "Hi, Mike. It's been a while since I emailed you, but as usual, life got in the way. We spent July taking the grandkids one at a time to the beach house for a week. So they each got their own time to be spoiled. Needless to say, it was as fun as it was exhausting. After chasing Junie, I'm sure you can relate. Oh, I can relate. Every time I see that little girl, she runs me into the ground. It's fun, but I don't know what I'd do if I had to do this 24/7, 365 days a year." Now, she goes on to say, "During the entire time, I still listen to you each morning." Well, thank you for that. So I do have a few things to ask. First, why is the 14th Amendment not being mentioned? In Section 3 of the amendment, it says Section 3 prohibits public office holders who have taken an oath to support the U.S. Constitution and then engage in insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or who give aid or comfort to enemies of the United States for serving in public office. Trump did give aid and comfort to enemies of the United States, and he was involved in the insurrection or rebellion. It doesn't say he must be convicted, just wondering why he's still able to run. Well, first of all, he's not been convicted of anything, but I understand your point. I think some of that's going to come out with the January 6th investigation, with these indictments. I think something's going to come of it with Georgia too. With some of these instances, I'm not sure how they tie in the 14th Amendment, but I'm sure they do. I think that's been Jack Smith's plan. It might even be Fonnie Willis's plan. They haven't talked about it as yet. As much as it says he doesn't have to be convicted, I would assume he does have to be convicted of it. So I believe that with the January 6th indictments, and I expect there's going to be more, there will be some reference to the 14th Amendment, and he will be precluded from running for president. I would assume that is Jack Smith's plan. I don't know. So I gave you a long answer to essentially say, I don't know, Deb. I don't know any more than you do, but I'm assuming that that's going to be part of it. I think everybody involved wants to make sure we don't go through this shit again. But remember what I told you, Deb. The best gift the Democrats could get is that Donald Trump is the nominee, because it will be that much easier for the Democrats to win. I don't care if he runs in 2024. I kind of hope he does, because he will get his ass whooped. So I don't know why it's not been mentioned yet. I'm assuming it will become part of it at some point in the near future, but I don't know enough to really give you an exact explanation of it. I'll look into it, and if I can figure it out or understand what's really going on, I'll certainly let you know. All right. Deb goes on to say, second, this isn't an ask, but more of a status. You know, I've spoken with you a few times regarding my dad and his fucked up views. I'm really having a hard time understanding why he changed into this monster. We came to verbal blows about a month ago, and I haven't spoken to him since. It's especially difficult since I was always a daddy's girl. Anyway, since the blowup, I have been trying to figure out when he changed. This past weekend, I think I stumbled on the reason why. My sister mentioned to me that he was donating money to some church. I asked which one, since he stopped going to church a few years ago. She said she would research and get back to me. She got me the name so I could research it. Turns out it's an evangelist out of Florida, that is, at the very least on the fringe of Christian nationalism. He has been donating to this guy since Obama years in the office, when Obama was in office. This religious nut job spouts how Obama was from hell. Romney was from hell. Trump is picked by the evil Biden crime family, blah, blah, blah. It's like every stupid thing ever said by a Trumplafuck comes out of this evangelist's mouth. At least now I know when it started with my dad and why. He most definitely is in a cult, but it's this religious one. So one problem is figured out. I'm still keeping my distance. As for the indictments, it's like watching a train wreck, but with much better results. I'm loving Jack Smith. It's so nice to see someone with a big old kahunas going after Trump. I agree with you and hope that they put the trials on TV. But even if they do, the Trumplafucks will never believe their savior did anything wrong. I do believe he will be convicted and will go to jail. The only thing that will save him from that is death. Sorry this went so long, but this is what happens when I don't email for a while. Keep doing what you do. Hugs, Deb. Well, thank you very much, Deb. And I'm sorry for your problems with your father. And this is one of the things that upset me about religions. Now, I can't speak on all religions and all churches, but I'm not a big fan of them because I think they do, in some cases, take advantage of people. And I think a lot of these television evangelists take advantage of elderly folks. You know, these folks are getting closer to their end date, their expiration date, and they're looking for something. And these people on TV, these evangelists, know that. And they do the same things that the Republicans do. They scare people. They make them nervous. They make them overthink things. And those people aren't as quick on the uptake as they once were. They're looking for some kind of vindication, some kind of help, some kind of redemption. And these people on TV suggest to them that they can give them that redemption, but for a price. Now, honestly, I haven't seen one evangelist on TV that I could honestly say was legit. They're all grifting. They're all like Donald Trump. They're all like the Republicans using fear. And this upsets me. And Deb, I don't know what you can do with your father once he's caught up in this. You could try to get him out of it, but I don't think he's going to want to get out of it. He's going to believe whatever this guy says. That's the ironic thing. And this is the same thing Donald Trump says. Guy comes on television and he says, I'm a man of God. He happens to be fairly articulate, maybe entertaining, tells some stories, and these people get sucked in. That's exactly what happened with Donald Trump. Now, these people know they have the ability to do this, and they have a choice. They can use it for good or for bad. 9 times out of 10, they use it for bad. 9 times out of 10, they use it to make money. They don't care what happens to the person who they're getting the money from as long as they get the money. That is, in essence, what Donald Trump does. That is what these evangelists do. And this is something we've got to address. I've said before, we can blame Donald Trump for a lot of what's going on in this country right now, all the bad. But we got to go back to the origin, and it does seem to be religion. These evangelicals stood by Donald Trump in spite of the fact he's probably one of the most sinful men on earth, but they did it because they thought they could get something out of him, whether it be money or overturning Roe v. Wade. They set everything aside. They set their better judgment to the side to get the one thing they wanted most, overturning Roe v. Wade. And in the process, they pretty much done away with any integrity or credibility of whatever group they're in. But it doesn't matter. I mean, to them, it only matters is they get what they want. And I don't know about you. That's not how my God thinks. That's not how good people think, decent people think. I'm afraid, Deb, I don't know unless you can get him away from the TV and put him through some deprogramming. I don't know if you can change his mind. But what possible parallel universe would an evangelist who claims to be a man of God spew racism? I've said many times before that I think Donald Trump is our retribution for having the audacity to elect a black president, Barack Obama. And I think that's true. It pissed off the racists. How dare you elect a black man as president of the United States? That's what fired them up. That's what got them enraged. And that's why we're in these times now. They were just fortunate to find somebody who would feed off that. But like those evangelists, Donald Trump doesn't have to believe what these people believe. All he has to know is that they are fervent about it, that he can incite them and grift them, and he took advantage of it. That's what evangelists do. I would love the opportunity to talk to any evangelist. Now, I'm not a theologian. I don't know the Bible inside and out, and I don't think you need to in order to be close to God if that's what you believe in. These people are despicable. I'm telling you, every evangelist I've ever seen on TV, I have a problem with. Now, there are some out there that people will say, oh, he's really good. No, he's not. I know who you're talking about. The guy with the O last name. He's not. He's a fucking grifter. He's a liar, and he's a piece of shit. They all are, because they don't care about your soul. They don't care about your quest to get to heaven. They care about how much money you're going to send them. Think of how many people love Jim Bakker and Tammy Lee, or Tammy Faye. Think of how many people just love them. How many people watch them, and how did that end up? All the people that followed them grifted them. And see, that's the thing that bothers me more than anything. I've said this before, when you have a church and you have a leader, a minister, a pastor, a priest, or whatever, who's led this church for a period of time and then does something untoward, exposes himself or herself for what they are. I always think about an elderly person that might be a member of that congregation, thinking they're getting closer to God and thinking that they're doing all the right things. And then something like this happens with one of their clergy. He does something ridiculous, or she does something criminal. What's in the mind of that elderly person? I mean, they're vulnerable to a certain extent, thinking they did the right thing to get close to God. And then they find out the guy leading it is worse than any devil they could have possibly imagined. Do they then think that they've wasted their time, that they've gone through to another path that isn't righteous? I don't know. But when you do that to somebody, it's tantamount to taking advantage of somebody when you have power over them. Maybe not in the official sense, but make no mistake, these people do have power over these people who watch and believe, and they take advantage of them every fucking time. All right. Next one. This one comes from who? Joshua. All right, Joshua. Joshua says, Mike, thank you for your thoughts about the email I sent a few weeks ago about the Texas border and the people killing traps that were illegally set up. He's talking about those buoys in the Rio Grande River. I disagreed on some levels with your response. How dare you? No, you're perfectly entitled to disagree with me. I've been married 40 years. I'm very well aware of when I've been pointed out being wrong. He goes on to say, I'm paraphrasing here. You said that we can't send troops down there. We can't have Americans killing Americans. It's just will not happen, you essentially said. You also said that something has to happen. No. However, as I said prior, if Biden doesn't do anything immediately about it, Governor Abbott will escalate and escalate until he starts using sharpshooters to kill people at will. This is what I could see play out. The news today explained how Texas has now attached saws in between the buoys. In addition, how will world leaders view this? How will our allies view this? This is a federal border. It's Biden's border. At some point, Biden will need to do something. This is all to say that I believe at some point Biden might need to go in with the military as the situation escalates. And if so, I will support that decision. I listen to you every day so I don't get too emotional, but this situation makes me more angry than I care to articulate. Wrong is wrong. Thank you, Mike. Your listeners appreciate your public service, Joshua. Well, thank you, Joshua. And I've been rethinking that a little bit. I mean, when I sit here and talk, I only know what I read and hear and I learn. I'm not that much smarter than everybody else. I'm just like the teacher who's ahead a few pages or a couple of chapters. But I try to take a look at these situations and try to analyze it out using facts and logic. And you're right, something has to be done about Texas and Greg Abbott and what's going on at the border. It is, I've used the word before, but abhorrent. It absolutely is. And I was trying to think of a time when a president did use the military. And I believe this to be the case. And I'm thinking about back in the 60s during the civil rights when they were integrating the schools and George Wallace stood in front of a school. I know the president talked to George Wallace, put some pressure on him. And I think the intent ultimately was if they were going to do this, that they would send the National Guard down to make sure that these kids got into school. So, in that sense, I guess the president could use military or the National Guard anyway to help a situation. But here's the real problem here. This is a state issue, but it is Biden's border. So it does pose some problems. There are some things that need to be done, and I'm not really sure what they can do. And I'm not sure what Biden is willing to do. That's interesting. He's going to have to do something at some point. This is a humanitarian issue, and Joe Biden's all about humanitarian issues. But if you go down there and overthrow a governor and take control of this, that's a pretty big precedent. I don't know that they can even do that. I mean, as I said before, I didn't say that we have to do something and there's nothing we can do. I didn't really say that. If I did, I didn't mean that. What I did say was that at the base, it's a state issue. It's the people of Texas's issue, even though it's a federal border. The best and the most expeditious thing they can do is get fucking Greg Abbott out of there. Get the legislature out of there. See, that's the thing. If they don't vote these fucks out, then theoretically it means the majority of the people in the state of Texas are all for this shit. And I think there are a lot of people that are. I won't say the majority with all the gerrymandering and shit, but this is a state issue at the base. Now, as it becomes more and more dangerous for people and people start dying and being injured and such, I do think the president does have to step in to do something. I just don't know what that is, short of sending the National Guard, pulling that shit up out of the river. And then now you've got to fight with the state of Texas. Joe Biden has to be very careful what he does. You know, we're going into a presidential election season. He's probably not going to win Texas anyway. But if he goes in too strong, then he's going to look like a dictator himself. It's a weird situation. And the sad thing about this is that for Joe Biden or Donald Trump or any other politician, what seems to always come first is, how is this going to affect public opinion? How is this going to affect my election? And there's the problem we have in this country. All our politicians are more concerned with power, money, and their elections than they are helping us, helping people. The only reason they come to help people is to change public opinion or to go against somebody else. That's what my concern about the Democrats has always been. They are acting like they're serving us and they're going to try to get us everything we need. Are they doing that because they believe that, or are they doing that because that's the most effective thing to fight against the Republicans to win the election? I know that sounds cynical, but based on 63 years in this world and watching politicians, that always seems to be the case. We do have some serious problems down on that border. It is Biden's border, but it is the state of Texas, and it is a pretty sketchy situation. I don't want to come off here like I know the answer, because I don't know the answer. I don't get paid like the president gets paid, so it's on his shoulders. But it's important that a decision is made, and a decision is made soon, because we can't continue on as a nation with the reputation we have with this humanitarian crisis. I'm with you on your frustrations. I have the same frustrations about it. And the thing about it is, it's not just those people on the border. The Republicans are marginalizing and harming a lot of people in this country. Think about all the women that are struggling with this abortion issue and maybe need an abortion for their health, and they can't get it. This is a bigger situation than just the border. We have Republicans hurting citizens of this country, and that's what needs to change. We need everybody to understand that, and when 2024 comes along, we need to wipe away all the fucking Republicans that are willing to do that. Unfortunately, we have a group, faction of people that support this shit, and therein lies the problem we have in this country. So that's a long answer again, Joshua, as I did for Deb, and I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know for sure. All I can do is look at it and make judgments based on the facts. And that's all I got, really. I got to trust that Joe Biden and smarter people than I will actually come up with a way to rectify the situation. But we as citizens, we should hold those expectations up to them. We should expect them to fix it. And really, the only thing we can do is keep talking, keep being loud, keep being in their face. That court of public opinion is very important to politicians. And if we control it, we can force them to do things that we want them to do, that they need to do to maintain the credibility of this country. All right, I have a story for you. Special Counsel Jack Smith. Oh, he's busier than hell. He's got the indictment to Donald Trump, but we know there's more coming from that. In fact, we know he's sending out more subpoenas. We know he's getting people in to be deposed. It ain't over with the January 6th investigation. There's going to be a lot of people involved. Well, Jack Smith obtained a search warrant for former President Donald Trump's Twitter account in January, according to court documents unsealed on Wednesday. We didn't know about this at all. Now, Twitter, of course, it's known as X. I don't give a fuck. I don't use it. Was initially resistant to complying. Elon Musk and Twitter did not want to give up the data, the post, the drafts, the DMs, and all the shit that were tied to Donald Trump's account with Twitter. Now, we know that with this Twitter account, they are required to turn it over when asked for it by the DOJ. But Elon Musk was saying, well, I don't know if we can do it because of executive privilege. Really? I mean, Elon Musk is supposed to be this smart guy. When and in what parallel universe does executive privilege come into play when you post something on Twitter or any social media outlet? You make it public when you do that. So there is no privilege. How do you get fucking privilege out of that? And all that really was Elon Musk coming up with some bullshit just to delay, distract, divert, whatever the fuck he was doing. Well, it ended up going to court. Okay. And Elon Musk and Twitter lost, of course, because they should have lost. And then they appealed it. Well, the appeal has come back and they lost again. And for the inconvenience, now Elon Musk and Twitter has to pay the Justice Department $350,000, which ain't nothing to Elon Musk, of course, but it gives an exclamation point to this whole thing. And they had to turn over the Twitter data to the DOJ. It's funny. He's already indicted Donald Trump. Jack Smith has, but he's still digging in. We're hearing about him digging into finances and campaign fundraising and election fraud, not election fraud, electors, fake electors, and now social media in terms of Twitter. You think there's any crimes that he could bolster with what's on Twitter? Yeah, I think so. Donald Trump is known for saying one thing and then doing another or just flat out lying. And I'm sure that will become very clear when they go through this Twitter account. Things are falling apart for Donald Trump. Things are falling apart for Elon Musk. The idea of changing this from Twitter to X, I don't know what the point of it is. I don't really use Twitter that much. I don't really care about Twitter that much. And I think a lot of people have stepped away from Twitter or X or whatever you want to fucking call it. But at least now Jack Smith does have this data. And I think it's going to be very valuable. I mean, here's the thing with Jack Smith, we could be looking at indictments all the way through the 2024 election. He's looking into so many things and so many people that he's going to be busy as fuck. And the people that are around Donald Trump, you can see they're starting to get a little bit fucking nervous. So, anyway, Jack Smith has Donald Trump's Twitter account. That should be interesting. Everything he posted there was for the public, but there were some drafts, like things he may have taken down or written and then decided not to run, the DMs, the interactions with people on Twitter. All of that is going to be laid bare by Jack Smith. And I'll guarantee you something comes out of that. Donald Trump can't help himself. No matter what he does, whenever he talks, he always implicates himself. He always puts himself in a bad situation. So we'll see what Jack Smith comes up with a Twitter account. But there's so many other things that Jack Smith is dealing with. It's just going to be fun to sit back and watch Donald Trump flop on the bottom of the boat like a fucking dead fish. All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. So I think a lot of us were hoping that Fani Willis would come out with her indictments this week. And as it turns out, New York Times has come out to suggest that she won't be issuing her indictments until next week. And they're getting that based on the fact that Fani Willis is pulling together the grand jury next week, presumably to vote on the indictments, and then she'll follow up thereafter with her indictments. This is an interesting case, though, because it's not going to be like Jack Smith's, where it's just Donald Trump. Remember, there's likely to be RICO charges in this indictment, or I should say indictments. Now, RICO is usually applied to organized crime where they have a lot of people involved. And in this situation in Georgia, there were a fair amount of people involved. You'll remember back after the grand jury met some time back. They talked to the foreperson. There was this young woman, kind of goofy, but she was pretty compelling. And she said that we would probably know most of the people that are going to be indicted. And she said that as many as 12 people could be indicted. So when the indictments come out about Georgia from Fani Willis, Donald Trump is going to get nicked. There's no question about it. The question is, who are they going to indict? Well, here's what we know for sure. Donald Trump will be high on the list, if not number one on the list. That's one. We also know that Rudy Giuliani got a target letter. So that would be number two. That leaves 10 other people indicted. That could be anybody. It could be Mark Meadows. It could be anybody. We don't know who it is. But it's going to be interesting to watch for the next several days. As much as we're anticipating who she's going to indict, all those people that think they might end up in the list, they're anticipating it too, and they're freaking the fuck out. It's going to be interesting to see if we see Lindsey Graham or whoever starting to get a little hinky over the next few days in anticipation of getting an indictment from Georgia. That that is going to be very, very fucking interesting, because make no mistake, there are people in Washington, D.C., people who are tied to Donald Trump that are very, very nervous. Very, very nervous. So there's one thing about this thing with Fani Willis, and it's how Donald Trump is getting a little crazy and nervous about this whole situation. Now, he's doing rallies and he's ranting and raving like he normally rants and raves. He rants about Jack Smith. He rants about all kinds of people. And lately he's been ranting about Fani Willis. Now, you'd expect that. He's ranting about, oh, she's a bad DA. She's corrupt. This is a phony case and she's going to drop it. And all those types of things you would expect. Except Donald Trump took it to a new level. He's come out and said that Fani Willis either had an affair or slept with a gang member. Now, where the fuck did that come from? The only thing I could possibly imagine is that Fani Willis has prosecuted a gang member a time or two. And you know what Donald Trump does? He finds little bits and pieces, put them together, whether they go together or not. He expands on it. Then he starts spewing his shit and lying. Now, whenever somebody's done that, when Donald Trump's done that to somebody, people freak out and they don't know how to respond and they don't get up, they get upset and whatever. But it's interesting what Fani Willis did. Fani Willis doesn't need to sleep with a gangster because Fani Willis is a gangster herself. She kept her temper, and she just simply said, look, Donnie, you have till today, Thursday, to prove that I slept with a gang member, or I'm going to add it to my motions against you. An motion against you for trying to intimidate a prosecutor who happens to be prosecuting you. Yeah, Fani Willis ain't fucking around. And Donald Trump just caught himself another charge, because he isn't going to be able to prove it. He's not going to do anything to try to prove it. And so when I did a TikTok about this, and I get some frustration by Democrats and Republicans. They all get caught up in the bullshit. They believe what they hear. And on the Democratic side and on the Republican side, from time to time, I will hear people say, oh, Donald Trump knows exactly what he's doing. He's very calculating about what he does and what he says. It's all a strategy. Now, conversely, I say that no, Donald Trump is a dumb fuck. He doesn't think about anything before he speaks. He pulls something out of his ass, spews it out of his mouth. Whether it's true or not makes no difference. No matter how outrageous or stupid it is, he will say it, and he will keep saying it as if it's true. Now, after hearing that story, I think you'd have to agree that I'm probably right. There is no strategy here. Donald Trump is very reactionary. He's very emotional. And at this moment in time, he's scared. He's especially scared of Fani Willis because of what Fani Willis represents. The RICO charges. That's making him fucking nervous because he knows as soon as his buddies get indicted, they're going to forget about him and try to focus on saving their own asses. But more importantly than that, because it is state crimes, he knows even if something crazy happens and he wins the presidency, there's nothing he can do to pardoning himself or shut down the investigation. That's a state crime, much like what's happening in the Manhattan district. And this is why I've always said there's no way he can get out from underneath all of this stuff. You've got J6, you've got the classified documents case, you've got Georgia coming, you've got the Manhattan district coming, you've got federal charges, but you've also got state charges. And short of becoming governor of whichever state he's got a problem, there's nothing he can do about it. Now, former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, a Republican, also confirmed this week he has received a grand jury subpoena. Former Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. Security measures have already been stepped up outside the Fulton County Courthouse in anticipation of the indictment announcements. They're preparing down there, but again, as I've said before, there's nothing that's going to happen. If nothing happened in Florida, which is a Donald Trump hotbed, it's not going to happen in Georgia. These people don't have the courage to go up against what they would run into if they try to pull that shit again. I dare say if the Trump-lefucks came out and tried to start trouble, it would end up not unlike what happened in Montgomery, Alabama. They would get their asses whooped. Now, police officers surrounded the building and barriers have also been set up. Now, during an earlier interview, Willis had indicated her work on the case was nearly done. We've been working for 2.5 years and we're ready to go. So she's ready to go. Now, I still have people out there. Well, if she's ready to go, why hasn't she done it? Fuck you. She'll do it in her own good time. She'll do it when she thinks it's appropriate. I really get a big kick out of people. They're either Democrats or they're Republicans trying to be covert, say, oh, nothing's going to happen. Well, motherfucker, a lot of things have happened. Donald Trump's company has been convicted of 17 charges of fraud, felonies. His CFO has been convicted. We've got indictments from the Manhattan district, indictments in Florida, indictments in Washington, D.C., and indictments coming out of Georgia. How do you think a 77-year-old man who's not of sound mind or body is handling this? I'm guessing not very well. Sure, he'll come up in the rallies and try to play tough guy, but we all know better than that. This is carrying a heavy burden for Donald Trump, and it will crush him ultimately. No human being can stand up to that, especially one as weak as Donald Trump. Now, Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney wrote this. He said, while being the subject or even target of a highly publicized criminal investigation, it's likely an unwelcome and unpleasant experience. No court has ever held that the status alone provides a basis for the courts to interfere with or halt the investigation. So that's not going to happen. We're going to have to wait till next week, but you know what? So what? So what? We waited this long. And I'm tired of the people who say, oh, nothing's going to happen. A lot has already fucking happened. And what we've seen and the indictments that have been issued and the charges, there's no way Donald Trump can't be held accountable. I've said it before. I'll say it again because I get a lot of people coming to my page and saying, oh, nothing's going to happen. Currently has 78 felony charges against him. He may have over 150 before it's all said and done. He only needs to be convicted of one charge, and then he's done. He's gone. He's out of the picture. Do you really believe that with over 100 felonies, he's going to clear the board and not get convicted of one, especially when you've got somebody like Jack Smith or Fonnie Willis who wouldn't put up a charge unless they were pretty confident they were going to win? Make no mistake, Donald Trump is going down. And if it's not moving too fast enough for you, tough fucking luck. I'm tired of people with this entitlement. Oh, it's got to happen. It's got to happen now, or just don't believe it. Well, fuck you. Go in the corner and don't believe it. I don't give a shit. You're adults now. Be patient. Watch it play out and see if I'm not right. All right. Donald Trump is such a dumb fuck, and he's so transparent in his dumb fuckery. Donald Trump had recently a good idea when it comes to the classified documents case. You'll love this one. Former President Donald Trump wants permission to be able to review the documents he is accused of illegally retaining at his Mar-a-Lago Country Club, the scene of the alleged crime where the FBI eventually recovered them during a raid about a year ago. Now, in a Wednesday filing with the U.S. District Court Judge Aileen Cannon, his lawyers said that the SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility that had been set up for Trump on his South Florida property during his presidency, has been suggested that it be reestablished, and that it was simply too burdensome for Trump to have to travel to already existing SCIFs in the area to consult with his lawyers as they prepare for trial. Wow. So what you're telling me is you got a guy who stole shit and you had to go and rip it from his cold hands to get it back to where it belonged. So now what you're suggesting is that we take the shit that he stole, the shit that he's been saying he wants back, give it to him again, reestablish a SCIF in Mar-a-Lago, and let him go through it because, he's busy. It's inconvenient for him to have to go to Washington, D.C. or wherever the fuck he has to go to. Well, tough shit. You attack this country. You stole classified documents. You no doubt showed them to God knows who. And now you want some accommodations in this trial? Do you forget that you're the fucking defendant? You're the criminal. I can't believe the audacity of Donald Trump and his lawyers. And I got to believe his lawyers have enough common sense to think that's fucking stupid. But for whatever reason, they continue to do his bidding. There is no way. Well, let me just say this. We're talking about Aileen Cannon. It wouldn't surprise me that Aileen Cannon would say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's do that. But Aileen Cannon already has a problem. She's already fucked up in this case. And I have a feeling that Jack Smith is either going to go after her in the 11th Circuit and get her kicked out of there, or after attempting something like this, she will definitely be gone. I think it's just a matter of time for Aileen Cannon. I thought maybe she was just a sycophant to Donald Trump and she knew better. But now it's becoming very clear that she doesn't know better. She's not a very bright judge. She's woefully inexperienced, and that inexperience is showing, and her partisan attitude or a biased attitude toward Donald Trump is showing too. This is not going to go well for her. Donald Trump and his lawyers will never get those documents back at Mar-a-Lago. There is no fucking way that that is going to happen. If they did establish a skiff down there when he was president, why were they sitting in the fucking bathroom? Why were they stuffed in his desk? You're going to trust Donald Trump. Now, maybe Aileen Cannon will try. It's hard to say how she will respond to that. But if she responds in the wrong way, trust me, the 11th Circuit's going to be dealing with this shit quick, fast, and in a hurry. And Aileen Cannon's going to be left packing. She's made enough mistakes, not only in this case, but previous cases, that she's going to be hard pressed to get appointments henceforth. Nobody's going to want this bitch running their court case. So we'll see what happens. Now, both the required security protocol surrounding President Trump's travel and the challenges surrounding the media and the public's intense focus on this prosecution pose an enormous obstacle to our ability to provide counsel to President Trump. They wrote this in an 11-page brief. It was Chris Keiss and Todd Blanche, his attorneys, and all I have to say is, nice try, motherfucker. That's not going to work. It's not going to happen. Even if Aileen Cannon says, oh, yeah, that's a good idea, let's fucking do that. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to fucking happen. You don't give a criminal the shit he stole, give it back to him and let him bring it home, especially when we know that he said that, oh, yeah, I want to get that shit back. That shit's mine. He still doesn't realize that that's owned by the United States of America. He has no ownership of that shit. It's absolutely amazing to me that he even says this shit, or he gets his lawyers to say this shit. It's absolutely outrageous. It's ridiculous. And I don't even believe we have to deal with this. It's very frustrating. And this is why I've said all along, we need those indictments coming out of Georgia. And we need more indictments coming out of the January 6th investigation to scoop up all these other fucks that were involved. Because once we break them down and separate them from Donald Trump becomes much, much weaker. And when he's weaker, then he'll just fold up and die. He needs that support. He needs people backing him up. And once the time comes that nobody is backing him up, well, then it will be fucking over. All right, here's another Trumplefuck who fucked around and found out. FBI agents shot and killed a Utah man during a raid on Wednesday morning after he allegedly threatened President Joe Biden and federal prosecutors with assassination. The raid happened hours before Biden was expected to land in Utah. To those Trumplefucks, and I know there's probably none out here in the podcast audience, but just a heads up. You don't get to go on social media and make threats against Joe Biden or any other politician or anybody for that matter. The FBI will be looking into it and they will take you down. And if you don't surrender, they're going to shoot your ass. And that's what happened in this case. According to the FBI, special agents attempted to serve Craig Robertson a warrant in Provo when the shooting happened. The Associated Press noted that the complaint alleges that Robertson mentioned presidential assassination. You don't do that any more than you mention bomb at the fucking airport. And made threats against Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, we know, of course, that Bragg is currently prosecuting Donald Trump, and Merrick Garland and Letitia James are all going after their Lord and Savior, and they don't like it. They get butthurt. Now, Robertson was facing 3 criminal counts: interstate threats, threats against the president, and influencing, impeding, and retaliating against federal law enforcement officers by threat. Now, in another Facebook post, Robertson reportedly wrote, "In my dream, I see Joe Biden's body in a dark corner of a DC parking garage with his head severed and lying in a huge puddle of blood. Hurrah." Another post read, "Digging out my old ghillie suit and cleaning the dust off my M24 sniper rifle. Welcome, buffoon in chief." Now, this guy wasn't obviously educated because his writing is horrific. But there was a picture I saw of this bloated old man with his ghillie suit on. If you don't know what that is, you ever seen those suits with like bushes or branches hanging off of it? You can't even really make out that it's a guy. Question I have is, what good does a ghillie suit do in a Washington, D.C. parking garage? That's for the bush. That's for the jungle, not a parking garage, you dumb fuck. So, anyway, this clown was not willing to go peacefully. So then it was ended peacefully when they killed his ass, which is what they should have fucking done in the first place. It's amazing to me how people will go crazy and start posting things on Facebook or Instagram or even TikTok, and they'll make these threats and they'll think nothing can come of it. They think that they have some power that they'll get away with it. Well, it's true. Well, it's not true, and you're going to get some shit for it. The FBI is going to come knocking at your door, and if you pull a gun on them, you're fucking dead. And you know what? You fucking deserve it. You fucking deserve to die if you go up against the FBI. Just a note, you don't pick on security guards on a Montgomery dock, and you don't fuck with FBI, because then you will fuck around and find out. Now, let's talk about Ron DeSantis briefly. Ronnie DeSantis is doing everything he can to eradicate democracy from the state of Florida. He wants to be a strong man, but he is a weak man. He is a dipshit. He is socially awkward. He is a joke. I feel strong in saying that Ron DeSantis is a joke of a politician. He's continually losing support in the primary polling. In fact, Chris Christie is catching up to him. The spread is even further between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. But Ron DeSantis is not opposed to fucking up his own state. Listen to what he did here. There's an Orlando area prosecutor. Florida governor. Now she's elected. The people of Florida elected her to her position. But Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on Wednesday hit back at the shock suspension, calling the stunt a smokescreen to distract from DeSantis' spiraling presidential campaign. Basically, he went and fired this prosecutor because he didn't feel she was doing the things he wanted her to do. Well, he's the fucking governor. She's the prosecutor. Let her fucking prosecute. But the woman also happened to be black, so that doesn't help the matter much. The woman's name is Monique Worrell, and she is now the second democratically elected state prosecutor to lose her job to a DeSantis power grab. The governor attributed Worrell's suspension to her being too forgiving on crime, despite her comfortably winning 67% of the vote in Orange and Osceola counties in 2020. Ron DeSantis basically disenfranchised all of those voters as governor of the state of Florida. Much like what we were talking about in Texas. When does this stop? How does this stop? What can Joe Biden do? Well, in this case, Joe Biden can't do fuck all. It's a state issue. The people that have to do something about it are the people that live in that state. And if they're uncomfortable with the way Ron DeSantis is running the state, well, then you got to fucking do something about it. Now, Miss Worrell said, I am your duly elected state attorney for the Ninth Judicial Circuit, and nothing done by a weak dictator can change that, Worrell said in a press conference on Wednesday. The executive order suspending Worrell cites neglect of duty and incompetence and is part of DeSantis' anti-woke crusade. Worrell's practices and policies have too often allowed violent criminals to escape the full consequences of the criminal conduct, thereby endangering the innocent civilians of Orange and Osceola counties, the governor's office said in a statement. But much like anything that comes out of Ron DeSantis' mouth, it's a fucking lie. The reason he did this to this woman is because she said that she would not prosecute people charged with abortion crimes. Now, DeSantis did the same thing to a Tampa prosecutor, Andrew Warren, for defying a state abortion ban last year. Warren challenged it in court and lost. In January, a federal judge acknowledged that the Florida governor violated his own state's constitution and a prosecutor's free speech rights by firing him, but held back from stopping him. Critics at the time warned that DeSantis would feel emboldened to strike again, especially as he continues to falter on the campaign trail. So the judicial system in Florida said, yeah, that's a bad thing, but we're not going to stop him. What is Joe Biden supposed to do about that? There's nothing he can do about it. The state of Florida has to deal with deal with their own issues. And as long as Ron DeSantis is the governor, it will never happen. As long as the legislature is controlled by Republicans, it will never happen. This is why I say to you, the main thing we can do to help fix this country is to get out en masse and vote these motherfuckers out. It's sad to say. You would like, oh, we'll send the cops down there and we'll arrest them, but you can't. They took it through the judicial system and they said, yeah, that's unconstitutional, but that's okay. Ron DeSantis is having all kinds of problems with his current campaign. Like I said, he's losing ground every day, and it's largely due to his ineptness, his douchiness, the fact that he's a dick, he's socially awkward. He's a horrible candidate. The only reason anybody gave him any thought at all is because he took an opportunity. He started talking like Donald Trump. He didn't, at the time, have the baggage Donald Trump had. So everybody says, well, if not Donald Trump, then Ron DeSantis. They didn't bother to look into if this guy is worthy of running for any elected office, let alone the presidency. They just grabbed onto him because they don't care as long as they beat the Democrats. They don't care if it hurts this country or hurts his state or hurts the people of this state. For God's sake, they got fucking leprosy in Central Florida. How the fuck did that happen? He needed to get back in the media in some positive way. That's ironic, isn't it? He sees this as positive. He wanted some red meat for the base, and he will have accomplished that today, Worrell said. Worrell had long been on DeSantis' target list, according to government emails that were exposed in Warren's case. She had also clashed regularly with the Orange County Sheriff, John Mina, who said she was too soft on crime and didn't pursue harsh enough charges for repeat offenders. Now, the tensions between them kind of simmered after a local shooting in which a news reporter, a 9-year-old child, and a woman were killed randomly. The suspect, 19-year-old Keith Moses, had been released earlier from prison on prior convictions for aggravated battery, assault with a deadly weapon, and burglary, and more. DeSantis' office demanded Worrell hand over the records of Moses' prior cases, but as she told them, all but one offense was from before her time in office. Now, not to side with Ron DeSantis, but our judicial system has some problems. We've seen it with what's going on with Donald Trump. There's a lot of holes in it. It doesn't seem to have the teeth it once has. So I understand somebody being upset about not being tough enough on crime, but there are guidelines with these courts. There are certain things they have to follow. They have a range of sentences, I think, that they can give. And as long as she's in that range, what's the fucking problem? If you don't like it, change the fucking law. Now, last July, Worrell alleged that Mina, in a meeting involving DeSantis, was trying to provide the governor with evidence that the governor could use to justify my suspension. And I guarantee you that's what happened. I mean, that's how it always happens. People come together and they plan to try to get somebody out, and it's just a matter of time of coming up a way to do that. It happens to politicians. It happens to all of us. You know, I've talked about my situation when they started firing or whatever they were doing, people who were older and making more money. It's the same thing in politics, but this is a particularly egregious thing. It's not like she was appointed. It's not like she was hired. She was elected. Now, this is two prosecutors that he's fired after they have been elected. The first one took it to court and they just let it go. So whose problem is that? The problem is with the judicial system in Florida. Ironic that Ron DeSantis would say she's being too easy on certain people, but they were so harsh on the two prosecutors that were fired, disenfranchising all the people that voted for them. I'm looking forward to the time when Donald Trump goes away, but I'm just as looking forward to Ron DeSantis going by the wayside. He has absolutely destroyed the state of Florida. For me, anyway. I like Florida. I like going to Florida, but I will not go to Florida now. It's just not a safe place to go. You got every knucklehead with a fucking gun walking around. And if not that, I got to worry about getting fucking leprosy in Central Florida. Fuck. It's a fucking mess, is what it is. So anyway, Ron DeSantis is doing what he's doing. He's trying to get his polling up, but it's not going to work. People are done with Ron DeSantis. And as I've told you before, Ron DeSantis will not be the nominee any more than Donald Trump will be. I don't know who it will be, but it's not going to be Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is a weaker candidate than Donald Trump, and Donald Trump cannot fucking win. He just cannot win. So we'll see what happens to Ron DeSantis, and my heart goes out to the people who live in Florida who have to deal with the bullshit that he's perpetrating on his own state. It's pretty sad. I mean, I know there's a lot of people struggling, a lot of people having to put out a lot of money. I know people who have homes down there that can't afford to have insurance on those homes, but they have to have insurance. Some of these people can't even get anybody that will insure their homes. What do you do in that case? The mortgage company finds out you don't have insurance. They'll take that shit back. There's a lot of people struggling in Florida. It's not just the brown people, but the whole situation with the racism and the fascism in Florida makes it a horrible place to go and even worse to live in. And I feel sorry for the folks that are there because there are some good folks that live in Florida. It's not your fault. It's your government's fault. But I will tell you this, coming up in 2024, if you don't do something about it, if you don't vote these motherfuckers out, I'm sorry to say this, you deserve what you get. It all comes down to the people and how they vote. And if you keep electing people like Ron DeSantis and the Republican legislature, you're going to get what you get. You don't have a right to whine about it if you voted for these fucks. Now, I know there's a lot of people down in Florida that won't vote for him. The question is, will enough people vote for the Republicans to keep them in place? I hope not, because I don't know how long Florida can last under the current conditions. It's just not a good place right at this point. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.